Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Smarter Campus podcast. Today, we have an inspiring guest who truly represents the next generation of global tech leaders. Today, joining us is Davy, a data scientist, software engineer, and cybersecurity analyst. Yes, all of those three things from Rwanda. And Davy is not only passionate about technology, but is also passionate about the potential to transform communities. And as a member of the Boodle AI Campus Leadership Council, I'm excited to introduce him. And Davy, I would love if you could just give us, people watching, a little more introduction to yourself.
All right. Thank you, Zach, for having me. I'm truly excited and to dive into this critical discussion today. Uh, and One great thing is, well, the topic that you're going to be uncovering is going to be one that is very interesting to, go through. And as someone pursuing my bachelor's degree in software engineering and specializing in artificial intelligence and machine learning, I've spent time building machine learning models and AI softwares and trying to solve real world problems. And my studies have taught me how technology, especially AI, can be a game changer, but also how it can leave many behind if not applied thoughtfully, right?
Yeah.
And growing up in Rwanda and seeing the strides that have been made with innovation in areas like, healthcare, education, and public services, I'm hopeful, excited, and cautious that while AI holds, great immense potential to transform, the world uh, in very many aspects, and that we use it, it also is also getting to get a big impact in our day to day. I mean, what's the last time you've actually contemplated writing a whole email without using AI? So
Yeah.
I've uncovered that with you as part of the leadership council as well, and getting to discuss how AI impact is actually right now. So yeah, I'll be sharing my insights from my academic journey and perspectives as well, and someone who's passionate about driving equitable AI solution for communities that need them the most. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you very
Well, before
much.
we get into the tough questions that we have planned today, I kind of, viewers, it's a lot of people that are really interested in the AI and education space. So, I mean, if you could kind of just paint a picture of how you discovered AI and how education in Rwanda has changed since AI came out.
All right, so that's very much simple. Initially, AI came to me as this, alienating language. Whenever a person said I initially thought about super fancy tech that I will not be able to comprehend. So that is me probably back in 2017. I was like, this is a far-fetched idea, right? Then after that, I actually came a bit more across it very not very long ago, a bit after the pandemic, when I was getting to encounter, all right, this is OpenAI making their first natural language model, so ChatGPT and everything, and got to interact with it afterwards when I was starting off my university. And the moment I interacted with it, I was like, yeah, this is the thing. Like, this is it. This is lit.
Yeah.
So I got to actually look into that, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to look further. I want to actually do something like that, because the way it made my life easier, I was like, how do we implement and how do we, scale it up? So how is that? That also speaks to how it has transformed the education right now. Because one thing is, when from the first sight of a student, you're like, this is a cheat code kind of way. But then that's where one student has to actually even sit down. I'm like, how do you actually leverage that to actually equip you with the learning that you actually were intended to have from that class session, from that assignment, and building on that so that you get a proper understanding. So I think that got me to rethink the whole. This is a cheat code, but this is now a tool which
Yeah.
I think very many students have a very big struggle to get to find the balance between that. Because, well, yes, I know a lot of students, we are lazy, but let's not be lazy to actually learn and actually find something new in a really cool, fun way, and find ways to navigate around that. Though I have to admit that, well, for some, it has been, it's already there. And for others, they still are like me a couple of years back, not knowing what AI is, which is a very big concern. And that actually embodies a bigger number of young people right now. And as we know, AI is the future, and the way it boosts productivity should be shared with everyone. And that's one of the key challenges that we're going to be having, and
Yeah.
finding how to use it ethically as the second point to uncover. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you attend one of the more prestigious universities in the country of Rwanda, and I would just be curious your thoughts on how the university, took in this AI boom.
Right. So I'll have to start by saying, yes, I was privileged to get that exposure to AI. And not only that, to actually be at the one school that actually even came up with AI as part of its curriculum, because we have an AI and machine learning specialization in our software engineering degree at the African Leadership University. And from that point on, from the school's perspective, the first thing that they took as an approach is actually making the whole programs of the school equitable to every single segment, or part of every single part of the communities. So whether you come from a great upbringing, the great schools, or from even marginalized communities and everything, and we all meet in that whole ecosystem, and the same classroom, and we get to interact and actually build every single piece of that AI together. And one great thing is we took it in as a challenge to say,
Yeah.
you know what, AI is there, it's there to be used, but how do we make sure that that is a tool? Because from the first intranet projects, we'd have, the tendency of over relying on that. Then they kind of, there's a time they brought up, there was technologies to detect that we use that. So kudos to those that are out there, Kimba, for those who code. There's also, think what's the name again? It's not coming, but it kind of detects that into texts. I'm not really remembering the name, but all of those tools got us back to saying, you know what, as much as we'd love to use it as a cheat code, but it's not going to replace you to do the job that you're supposed to do, because you're here to learn. Um, then from that point on, that's how we got to know how to get around it, build it, and improve that. And from that point on, taking a small step back, other schools as well have gotten the immense opportunity to also interact with AI. So uh, a lot of the schools here in Rwanda have incorporated that, and especially even in the region, the East Africa and everything. And everyone wants to know, okay, you know what, AI is the next big thing. How do we get to that? Some are way more advanced than others. Yes, the gap is there, but it's there to actually even be broken so that we make it an equitable tool for everyone to get access to, as a commodity will, be
Yeah.
using to scale up and, make bigger things, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know one thing you're passionate about on the Boodle Blocks and the Campus Leadership Council is the equitable access. So now I think it's time to kind of get into the more difficult questions. Uh,
Yeah.
so we were kind of talking about this earlier. It's that, I mean, AI has the potential to really uplift communities, right? But then at the same time, as you just mentioned, it also has the ability to like deepen inequalities, right? If someone has
Yeah.
the ability to use it, others don't, that gap gets larger. From your perspective, where do you think AI plays in like uplifting developing countries? Do you think it's good, bad, and why?
All right. I think from that point on, I'll have to go from, a whole framing of this question,
Yeah.
because one of the key aspects, the first thing I have to mention is a key factor where, in terms of AI and how it's impactful, though, let's say I'm going to start from Africa's, perspective and spectrum.
Yeah.
Uh, Africa is nearly 17% of the world's population, but only produces less than 1% of the global AI research output and everything.
Yeah.
Now, imagine if the impact of AI was truly accessible in all the regions in Africa, for example. Right now, don't you think it would empower, or do you think it would also deepen those inequalities? That's one of the key questions that I have somewhere always in my head in terms of thinking, how does that work?
Mhm.
And when thinking about it being a good thing or a bad thing, we have to also look at the whole intentionality of using AI as a tool, because I highly doubt that anyone actually starts without a good impact that they want to actually emulate. And sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't. That's a fact. And it all depends on the use case scenarios and
Yep.
how it actually gets delivered to its intended purpose from the starting point. And from that point, I have to start, let's say, uh, let's start, let's say, in healthcare, right?
Yeah.
Initially, they were saying right now you're going to be starting to be treated with a whole robot and everything. But in all cases, you find that no, you're not going to be, this is not going to replace the human touch, because the human touch is very much crucial to that process and hence cannot be subsidized by an AI to actually automate that task, right?
Mhm.
So that is a person having a fear of, their jobs getting wiped. But then that's on the bad side if it were to actually remove that, which I really hope it's not. But then right now we have, let's say, tumor detection, in terms of fighting cancer and everything. Right now, that is actually a whole AI process where the whole scan is actually compared to, millions of scans and everything, and giving the whole result in, just a small, flip of a finger. And, you know which tumor exactly, and what's the kind of tumor that the person has. And I'm like, from that point, once you have that in as part of the picture, you see that it's going to be something good. You're actually saving lives. That's a really key aspect of having AI as a companion in that. Now, let's say another sector being education, and from the Rwandan context, where we have one teacher for every 49 students in the second Rwandan secondary schools. AI-powered personalized learning could help kids learn at their own pace. Because here's one thing: every single person has their own way of learning and their own speed. And one thing is for sure, uh, the whole ratio of uh, educators and students is not keeping up. But how do we implement those tools to deliver equitable infrastructure and ensure that they get access to that? And one of the key aspects that we also have to take in consideration is the infrastructure attached to that, where we find that a big number of people in, especially the marginalized communities, underdeveloped and developed countries, underdeveloped and developing, sorry, they have limited access to those facilities that enable them to actually leverage AI. And the moment you start actually getting to get that access to them, uh, it's quite a tricky situation
Yeah.
that requires you to carefully discern how that is going to go and how that is going to actually impact them. And yeah, more or less, that's one very key aspect that one could have and
Yeah.
continuously develop. Let's say if you're actually bringing in a solution for a farmer that's using this AI to maximize their crop production, let's say, and from that point on, that has been there. And then again, once you give them that tool and the means and everything, you actually even charge them, let's say, $5 to use the AI, right?
Yeah.
Because, well, it has to make money, and the person makes less than $2 a day. Like, that's not equitable. But in the whole conceptualizing of how that would be, kind of putting in partnerships and getting every single stakeholder engaged into making sure that, AI is accessible, and after making it accessible, you actually leverage its use in your everyday
Yeah.
programs and what you do. So yeah.
So the opportunity's there. It's the execution, right? That's what you're saying.
Hmm.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Well, off of that, so a statistic you mentioned that was really interesting is that Africa holds 17% of the world's population, correct?
Yeah.
But yet they hold 1% of how AI is being researched and grown and stuff like that. Like, what biases do you think that's leading towards?
One big bias is probably the fact that Africa is not an AI market. Like there's nothing like there's no AI in Africa, and a person can see that. Okay, not only that, but in terms of growing AI models that are robust, sustainable, and solve real-world problems, we fall back to the fact that if Africa is not getting involved, we're actually missing a crucial piece to actually enable it to solve problems that are related to Africa and for Africa. Because how do you bring in an AI tool that has been fed, a whole big chunk of information that the whole data that it's been ingested is not being applicable to the African context. And even much simpler, let's say last year, me going to GPT, I thought, okay, you know what? I must actually speak English because ChatGPT does not speak Kinyarwanda, right? And in that point on, I get to rethink the whole process. I mean, doesn't that limit the access to that AI tool that is already there, that should be serving everyone, and that should be actually deriving that impact? But once you actually engage Africans to actually feed in great data sets to actually solve the problems, AI to actually even speak the African languages, as the majority of the languages of the world are currently in Africa, we get to actually miss out a very big segment, and a big segment that could have been used to actually even make a bigger, better product. So if you're actually composing a song, get an African touch, get an Asian touch, get an American touch, get a European touch, and from that point on, get all of that together and you have a masterpiece. That's what we want AI to be. So that's the bigger level that we want AI to actually be on.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. I don't think very many people talk about this. The fact that, I mean, how, like, Africa seems like there's so many problems that could be solved with AI, right? That was that long kind of tangent we went on,
Yeah.
was that you can solve a lot of those issues. But if those issues aren't presented in the training, they're not going to be solved. So how, I mean, like as you mentioned, there's not a market there for AI as much. There's not big giant companies dumping billions and millions of dollars into buying this technology, using it. Like, what do you see the future of? Like, if you could build the future of AI in Africa, how would you go about doing it?
Well, one thing is for sure, the first step is kind of getting every single stakeholder in the whole problem to actually sit together and generate the whole solutions that we can get to work. So what do I mean by that? So getting the whole stakeholders, as in what are they looking for in terms of AI, what AI solutions do work, and how do we actually even grow them from ourselves? Because one of the key aspects, you cannot expect a person that doesn't fully understand your problem to build your solution, right? So to build the AI solutions for Africa, Africans have to build them. So how do we equip ourselves with the capacity of doing that? So that's one really key aspect to consider. How do we ensure that what we do, we find ways to actually even add AI to the whole mix? Because uh, there are some points where you find that that whole approach of embracing AI is a bit people are getting reluctant to the
Yeah.
idea. But once you actually warm to the idea and say, how does that work? How do I experiment that? And how do I measure that from that point on? Uh, how does that work? And then from, let's say, the governments and NGOs and so on and so forth, they actually sit together and see how do we set up infrastructure to make that doable, because we are to win if that actually works. How do we ensure that we create jobs for the people in the
Yeah.
sector? How do we ensure that that actually guarantees to actually create a whole, an investment opportunity, so that even those big techs actually see that, what, there's a market to actually be served here.
Yeah.
So how do we also ensure that we're going to eliminate those biases from that point on? Are we going to, let's limit the data exploitations? Because one of the main key concerns are, how do we actually even ensure that the data that we use is not going to be used elsewhere? And creating all of those kind of personalized solutions to us is a very key aspect. And there's a lot of solutions that I've been seeing that are being implemented. Do you want for me to share at least one small
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Go
All
for it.
right. So like right now in Rwanda, let's say right now in Rwanda, there's this NST2. So this NST2 is more or less a whole program that is intended to get to the Vision 2030 of Rwanda. And so it's the national strategy for transformation, which has been revised recently in 2024, where in 5 years we're expected to have 1 million coders in the country. Mind you, Rwanda's population is 12 million, so 1 in 12 Rwandans has to be a programmer by 2030, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is quite an immense market that you're creating of, uh, a whole ecosystem of people who can build those solutions and bring them to life. And how are you going to right now get the infrastructure, which is the first key point, get their outreach, engage them, and ensure that you're equipping them with all those skills. Right now, with many courses that are being offered for people in tech, especially women and girls, and making sure that we see their representation and we have, them at the forefront to actually, create a whole sustainable solution that is curated for Africa by Africa. So,
I like that.
that's one of the key examples.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
You got
it's
to
a
coin
whole
that,
ocean of
Davy.
opportunities. Yeah.
AI for Africa by Africa. Okay, so we're running up on the end of our time here. Last question. Uh, any advice for a young adult, young person, don't even have to be an adult in Africa that wants to make this change, that wants to be a part of this change? How would you recommend being a leader like yourself?
It's really quite simple, not going to lie. Embrace change, because if there's one thing that Africa has had for the past couple of years and passed through is change, change, change. But then adapt to change. So we have a really great opportunity of AI right now being part of our day-to-day lives. We take that opportunity and run with it and ensure that we actually make it ours. Because the moment you start saying, okay, AI is a foreign concept, AI is something that you can do. Like, no, AI is a technology that is there to help you grasp it and actually leverage from it in terms of your productivity, what you do, and amplify it. So it's a tool that's there to be conquered, let's say, if I may call it like that.
Yeah.
So go for it, take it, learn how to use it, and maximize its use for you. And yeah, that's a very simple formula.
Yeah, well, Davey, I mean, this is inspiring to listen to you talk about this subject. I think it's something that, I mean, I've started to see, Africa is underrepresented in the AI voice, and I think you painted a perfect picture. And I think a lot of people on LinkedIn, on here, should listen to you. Uh, Anyone listening, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. I'll have all of Davey's contact information in the LinkedIn post, along in the YouTube. Yeah, great young man, and I'd love if anyone would get in touch if they have any questions about AI in Africa. Thank you so much, Davey, for being here. It's been a pleasure. Have a good one, everybody.
Oh,